Yellow Certificate Shop is the best way to build a well-balanced team. I joined Arknights early on release, but I didn't stick with the game because I found it a little overwhelming. I was playing Fate Grand Order at the time, and I couldn't play 2 gacha games simultaneously. I came back a couple of years later to find out I had missed on so many great 6-star operators. But I was able to catch up on most of them, and that was because of a decision I made to only use yellow certs exclusively to buy 6-star operators and nothing else. For a free-to-play player, and especially for someone like me who missed a lot, buying headhunting permits was a bad deal. It offers just a few rolls for the amount it costs, and even if you happen to get a 6-star, you will be at the mercy of RNG. So in this video, I will make a buying guide for the upcoming yellow certs shop operators, to hopefully help you decide which operators are best for you to buy, and to approximately know when they are coming to save for them. Of course, we don't know all the future additions to the shop and when they are coming, but for the operators that have never been in the shop, we know who is coming and in what order. Arknight shop has a pattern of rerun operators. These are the operators who were featured in the shop before, followed by first-time added operators. These are the operators who never appeared in the shop before, and those are the ones we will be talking about in this video. Of course, sometimes this pattern changes to rerun, and then new. This change made it very hard to predict the release date for these operators, so I will do my best to update this video's chapters to include dates whenever they're available. If you want to understand this better and know what operators are coming in the reruns, I recommend you to watch NFZen. I will leave the link to his channel in the description. Without further ado, let's see the first operator. Dorothy. Dorothy is a trap master specialist, which means she can use traps to assist in combat. The effect on her traps is determined by which skill you choose, and she has a diverse kit, from debuffing defense, stunning, and binding, to slowing and dealing arts damage. She has great crowd control and decent damage. She is good on new accounts that don't have many operators built, especially 6 stars. But I also can't really recommend her to new players because she loses a lot of damage if she is not at Elite 2 with the module, which I know dealing damage isn't her main role, but it's a huge downside for her. So it's better to promote more rounded operators like guards, snipers, or defenders. And if this is not bad enough for her, the next operator is Mlynar. Mlynar is a Liberator guard, which means he does not attack and has 0 block when his skill is inactive. The attack gradually increases up to plus 200% over 40 seconds. The attack is reset when the skill ends. His third skill doubles his trait effect, meaning he will get plus 400% attack when fully charged. It has a massive range and can target both melee and aerial enemies. It also gives him a big damage modifier that works insanely well with his trait attack being doubled. This allows him to easily deal with high defense enemies, or any type of enemy really. It decreases his trait attack by minus 10% each time he defeats an enemy, but this doesn't matter against weaker enemies, and you can avoid using this skill when there are a lot of trash mobs if you want him to defeat a stage boss. He has a very cheap DP of 12 to help you deploy him early to charge his trait and skill, and while doing that he is not completely useless. His talent makes him more likely to be attacked, making him a good bait thanks to his high HP, defense, and arts resistance. Overall, he is a top tier operator, and I consider him the best non-limited, so if you have the yellow certs you won't regret buying him. Stainless. Stainless is an artificer supporter, which means he can use support devices in battles. The devices can be deployed on any deployable tile on the map. This gives him an edge over other supporters or buffers who need to be near the supported operator. His first skill increases the attack of operators who are equipped with the devices. It also increases his damage for better lane holding, but it's only used for attack buffing, making it rare to benefit from the damage increase. The attack buff is great and it can be split between 2 different operators, and they give a small passive attack buff when off skill. His second skill generates 1 SP for the operator equipped with a support device every 3.5 seconds, and when it's active it generates 1 SP every 2.5 seconds. It also slightly increases his attack and defense for better lane holding. The SP generation from this skill is good and it can be beneficial for operators with offensive and defensive recovery skills, who usually struggle to charge their skills, making them less stage dependent. And it also works well with unlimited duration skills that usually take a long time to charge. His third skill devices can be attacked by allied operators to charge them. When charged they deal AoE physical damage. The damage is decent and these devices can be used to reach further away enemies. And most importantly, it can charge allies' skills that have offensive recovery skills like Thorn's skill 3. While he seems like a good operator, he has some drawbacks. First, he alongside his devices costs a lot of DP, which is especially bad for a supporter where they are supposed to be relatively cheap to deploy. This combined with the cooldown between deploying his devices makes him very slow to get going. Secondly, his first skill attack buff can be replaced by Warfarin in most situations, and his second skill SP regeneration, while not as effective, it can sort of be replaced by 5 stars like Warfarin, Telopsis, and Liskarm depending on the situation. His third skill is good and unique, but it's not something you will be using frequently. Don't get me wrong, he is not a bad operator by any means. If you have him, he is worth building. But I wouldn't recommend buying him when there are a lot of better options, and he is one of these operators that you won't be using often as he is rarely needed. Penance. Penance is a juggernaut defender, which means she can't be normally healed by her allies. Her form of survivability is her talent that grants a barrier equal to 50% max HP on deployment. When she defeats an enemy, she gains a barrier equal to 10% max HP, and the barrier caps at 300% max HP. That means she needs to be deployed early to charge her barrier, but that can be annoying with her huge DP cost of 36 at Elite 2. Her third skill immediately grants her a barrier equal to 130% max HP, increases her attack interval, attack plus 400%, and makes enemies more likely to attack her. This is a defensive recovery skill, so the taunt helps her charge it faster when there are ranged enemies while also protecting other operators. This skill also helps her charge her barrier for harder waves with elite enemies and bosses. Speaking about bosses, this skill deals insane damage thanks to the huge attack modifier and her already high base attack, so no matter what kind of enemy she is facing, she will do a lot of damage. As for her weaknesses, she has huge DP cost and she needs to be deployed early. And her third skill is defensive recovery, which means you will need to time it properly because she will struggle to charge it against bosses since they usually have very high attack intervals. But you can work around this with SP chargers like Stainless or others who can help her charge it faster like Blemishine. Overall, she is worth getting, especially if you lack a good lane holder or a tank, since she can play both roles perfectly. But I recommend you not to buy her if you don't have enough save for the next operator. Read the Flame Shadow. Read the Flame Shadow is an incantation medic, which means she heals allies in her range for 50% of the damage she deals. She is consistent healing as long as she can attack, and that's partly thanks to her talent that allows her also to heal herself alongside her allies simultaneously. She is also a good debuffer as she has a chance to apply Cinder that lowers the enemy attack and apply Art's Fragility when attacking. Her second skill gives 2 allies 3 fireballs that deal Art's damage and increase their healing. The fireball effect triggers every 1.5 seconds, making the healing and the damage dealt very consistent. With her third skill, she can target 2 enemies and apply Cinder to them. Enemies with Cinder take damage every second, and when defeated they deal damage to nearby enemies and apply Cinder to them. It's a great skill to clear large enemy waves. And with the chain explosion it can even defeat elite enemies and bosses. She is a great healer with damage that is on par with most casters. She does both her jobs as a caster and a healer very well, making her a valuable operator in all kinds of content the game throws at you. Lyn is a phalanx caster, which means she doesn't perform normal attacks but has greatly increased defense and arts resistance. When her skill is active, attacks deal AoE arts damage, but she loses some of her defense and arts resistance. Phalanx casters are basically the defenders of ranged operators. If deployed correctly, they can draw aggro off of your other ranged operators, and she is very good at being a defender. Thanks to her talent, she gets a crystal barrier that blocks all damage, shattering when 200 or more damage is taken from a single source. When shattered, she deals damage and stuns every enemy in her range. And with her module, she has a 75% chance to recover 2 SP when attacked, which further complement her role as a tank and helps her charge her skill extremely fast. Her third skill increases her attack and attack range, and increases the crystal barrier damage threshold by 3 times. So unlike other phalanx casters, she is more durable during her skill. When she defeats an enemy, she immediately shatters the crystal barrier and creates a new one, adding more to her damage and stunning enemies. Overall, Lyn is a great AoE caster. She has good damage and crowd control, and she can tank most enemies' attacks, allowing to deploy her in tiles that are too dangerous for other ranged operators. Qiubai. Qiubai is a Lord Guard, which means she can launch ranged attacks that deal 80% of her normal attacks. Her second talent gives her a 20% chance to bind an enemy when attacking, and her first talent deal an additional 40% of attack as arts damage when attacking enemies affected by slow or bind. This helps elevate her damage by quite a lot, so she can be a bit team reliant. Her skills are based on binding, slowing, and dealing art damage. She is not as popular as her other Lord Guard's counterparts because Thorns has a great and convenient unlimited duration skill, and Silverash is a great Helidrop with massive range and high AoE damage. But not being as popular doesn't mean she is bad. I would say she is near their strength as an operator, and even more useful against high defense enemies, and enemies that are weak to arts damage, plus she has some crowd control. She is worth getting if you don't have Silver Ash, Thorns, or a good melee damage dealer, but unless you have a lot of certs saved up you should skip her because the next operator is Ines. Ines is an agent vanguard, which means she has a low redeployment time and can perform ranged attacks. Her first talent allows her to bind enemies and steal some of their attacks when attacking. Her second talent reveals invisible enemies in her range and slows them. After retreating, Ines leaves behind a shadow sentry with the same effect. She has one of, if not the best talents in the game, and with her low redeployment time she can spam them across the stage. Her second skill expands her range, increases her attack and grants her invisibility. Each attack grants 1 DP and steals attack speed from the target. The expanded range allows her to reveal more invisible enemies and bind them. The increased attack speed makes her generate more DP, and with the increased attack she can even chip away elite and enemy bosses. Ines is the best vanguard and one of the best operators in the game overall. She has unmatched utility in her talents and she has great DP generation. At a low redeployment time, it is highly recommended to buy her, and you don't have to worry about the next operator like at all. Qiubai is a core caster, which means she deals single target arts damage. Unlike other core casters, she is more catered to crowd control in the form of Levitate, which she can apply with all her skills. Levitate makes the target an aerial enemy and stops them from moving, attacking, or using a skill. If the target weight is greater than 3, the duration will be halved. And this is where problems with this operator start. Her whole kit revolves around levitating enemies, which is fine if not most of the bosses are immune to it. And if they are not immune to it, they only levitate half of the duration because of their high weight. And to make this worse, your ground operators can't hit the enemies while levitating because they are considered aerial enemies. Her first talent increases the attack and silences aerial targets for 3 seconds. The damage increase and silencing are good, but if that's what you're looking for, then there are a lot of better and cheaper options for that. Her second talent applies weightless to enemies with 80% or more HP within the attack range. The 80% restriction is horrible, but her Y module makes it to 50%, and inflicts 20% arts fragility on enemies with less than 50% HP. But even if there were no restrictions, the weightless only decreases the target weight by 1, so it still won't be enough for bosses, and it can't even be stacked with other operators' weightless effect like Angelina's. Her X module increases the silent duration on her first talent from 3 seconds to 5 seconds at level 3, and makes her ignore 10 art resistance. The modules give her some damage and utility boosts that levitate her from a bad to a functional operator, which I don't recommend you get because she needs a lot of investment just for her to be an okay operator. If you need a strong caster, just wait for Ayafyatla to be on the kernel selecting or in the shop. I'm not going over Qiubai skills because they basically go, levitate and deal damage. Executor the Ex Foedere. Executor the Ex Foedere is a Reaper guard, which means he can't be normally healed by allies. Attacks deal AoE damage. He recovers 50 HP for every enemy hit during attacks, up to block count, which is 2. All his skills use ammo and are offensive recovery. His second talent increases the ammo capacity of his ammo-based skills by +1 for every Laterano operator deployed, which there aren't many good ones to work with. His first talent grants him a 20% chance for his attacks to hit twice, increasing by 5% for each ammo consumed while a skill is active, resetting when the skill ends. This talent increases his damage substantially, but the activation chance is too little, making it only effective in the last few ammo left. But nonetheless, this talent double hitting means he double heals from his trait and gets an extra SP as all his skills are offensive recovery. And thankfully this talent gets a huge upgrade from the module that increases the chance from 20% to 35%. And the double attack now ignores 300 defense. This allows it to build up faster and help deal with somewhat high defense enemies easier, and overall adds a lot to his damage. His third skill increases his attack interval, his attack by +180%, and also increases his attack by 6% each time ammo is consumed, stacks up to 30 times. It also expands his range, triples the healing from his trait, and when the skill ends deals 250% of attack as physical damage to all enemies attacked while the skill is active. This skill is what makes him a great operator. It has good survivability with tripled trait healing, and great damage that ramps up with each hit, and its feather increased from his talent with a burst of damage at the end. His high damage allows him to take down elite enemies and bosses, and not be just a lane holder, which is something he excels at by the way. So I recommend you get him, especially with the operators that are before and after him being somewhat underwhelming. Just keep in mind that he needs a lot of investment for his level 3 module and S3M3, but unlike Qiubai, he becomes a top tier operator when he is fully built. Swire the Elegant Wit. Swire the Elegant Wit is a merchant specialist, which means she has reduced redeployment time, but while deployed, she consumes 3 DP every 3 seconds. With her first talent, she gains 1 coin when activating a skill. While her skill is active, gain 1 coin whenever DP is consumed by her trait and gets plus 4% attack, stacking up to 9 times. The coin system does hold her back a little bit since it takes 3 seconds to gain 1 coin, and the increasing overtime attack buff while big, it does contradict her role as a fast redeploy. As for her second talent, when taking lethal damage, if enough DP is available, she spends 5 DP to heal 70% HP. The DP cost doubles with each activation. While it has great survivability, it can drain all your DP really fast against hard-hitting enemies, but thankfully she is a fast redeploy, so it's easier to redeploy her when the cost becomes too high. Her second module reduces the DP consumption of this talent from 5 DP to 3 DP, and the health restoration increases from 70% to 80%. It also adds a new trait of increasing her attack by plus 4% whenever the trait cost is paid, stacking up to 5 times. This new trait solves the issue of her first talent taking too long to charge for fast redeploy operators. As for her skills, they all consume coins to activate their effects. Her first skill heals a friendly unit in her range when attacking. Her second skill places champagne bombs in her range that deals physical damage and slow enemies. And her third skill deals burst damage and pushes enemies. From my experience using her, her second skill is the only viable one. It has decent damage and has slow, which make good at holding back enemy waves for your ranged operators to have an easier time clearing them. As much as I have fun using her, I can't really recommend her as there are a lot of operators who can do her job better, and she is in a tough spot because the next operator is Typhon. Typhon is a besieger sniper, which means she prioritizes attacking the heaviest enemy. Heavy enemies usually are bosses or elite enemies with a lot of defense. This is where her first talent comes into play. Continuous attacks gradually ignore increasing amounts of the target's defense, up to a maximum of 50% of its defense. So no matter how high the enemy's defense is, ignoring half of it allows her to face any enemy the game throws at you. Her second talent deals critical damage and slows an enemy when damaging it for the first time while a skill is active. Slowing an enemy keeps them in her range longer, allowing her to make an extra attack or 2, which synergizes well with her second skill that can defeat most non-elite enemies in 2 or 3 shots at most. Her second skill is an unlimited duration AFK skill after the second activation. It increases her attack, and each attack fires off 2 arrows prioritizing different targets with a 40% chance of stunning targets for 1 second. This is one of the best lane holding skills. It has high damage, multi-targeting, and stun, and it activates the slow from her talent regularly. The first activation of this skill only needs 8 SP, making it easy to deploy right after your vanguards without needing your melee lane holders to be present first before deploying her. Her third skill marks an enemy within her range. Attacks will follow the marked enemy all across the stage and randomly strike enemies around them, dealing damage and stunning them. The skill activation grants 10 ammo, and the skill ends when all ammo is used, and it can be manually deactivated. This skill locking on a target makes it easy to stack her first talent's defense ignore, and with her high attack and attack modifiers from this skill, it can easily melt most bosses. She is a great sniper who can handle any content the game throws at you. I highly recommend you to buy her if you can. Jessica the Liberated. I am not sure if Jessica the Liberated could appear in 2025, so I will go over her quickly. She is a sentry protector defender, and she can deploy a very tanky mobile riot shield in the 4 adjacent tiles to her. When the shield is deployed, Jessica turns to face it. She is one of the best defensive operators we have, while also having great offensive capabilities for a defender. The operator after her is Foedere. They are both great, so pick the role you lack the most in your account. That's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you for watching.